First of all, welcome everybody to my lighting channel. I'm so grateful that you're here. We're talking about an important topic today around bone building, but let me get the little bit of business out of the way. Subscribe to the channel. You'll get notifications of new videos that we keep posting. There's a lot of free videos there. If you want to join and get the new videos on a weekly basis, then join, subscribe, go to the Lighter Living Library. You can join there if you want the 15-day trial. But if it's more important to you to stream, then definitely do it through the YouTube channel. The other thing is obviously follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll update you as we go along with the little secret book that I'm writing. Long ongoing process. I've been promising it for a long time, but I'm actually in the midst of it. So that will happen hopefully in the next few months. So let's talk about osteopenia and osteoporosis. First, I don't know that everybody understands how bone is actually built. So when we're very young, we build a skeleton. Our bones are made up of hard shell and porous spongy bone on the inside. By the time we hit our mid-20s, we've built that skeleton, assuming that you've had the right diet and you've been exposed to all the right nutrients and there's nothing wrong. You know, you haven't had a chemotherapy or another medication that interferes with bone building. So assuming that your skeleton is strong by the time you're 30, bone is always growing. So there are two types of cells inside your bone. One is building the bone, the other one is eating down. And if you don't get enough nutrients, those osteoclasts, which break down bone, will break down more bone to take the nutrients out of the bone, which is why diet is very important. But eating the food and taking the supplements isn't enough. Once it's in your blood, it's one thing, but what's more important is that it goes actually to the cells where it's needed. And that's something that we have no way of knowing. You can get your serum levels checked. And one of the things that I highly recommend that you do on an annual basis is check your vitamin D, because D is essential to build bone. It's not just calcium and phosphorus and all the minerals. Vitamin D is essential. We don't get enough of it because we tend to use sunblock, etc. And it's a very secretive deficiency. Often people don't understand that why they don't feel good, and nobody's thought to check their vitamin D levels. So definitely do that on a regular basis. Make sure you get a little bit of sun exposure at the safe hours of the early morning, and eat lots of calcium. As we age, try to take a supplement. Magnesium is very important too. I write about this on lighterliving.com, where you can talk about the various types of magnesiums. There's so many different kinds. It's really confusing. So talk with your doctor about whether you need a calcium magnesium supplement with vitamin D, and then vitamin K, and then vitamin C. They're all tied together. So nutrition is really important. The other thing that affects our bone health is our hormones, and estrogen, being one of the hormones that women make until menopause, protects the bone building mechanism. So once we lose our estrogen, we're definitely beginning to lose bone. And so what does the doctor say? He says, do weight-bearing exercise, eat right, take a supplementation. And I recommend all of those things. And again, talk with your doctor about it. I am not a doctor. I don't ever want to take the place of your doctor. So the two things that become risky as we lose our bone density and our bone strength is obviously the tendency for fracture. And that is the thing that I think nobody really addresses. When your bone begins to lose density, you can have spontaneous fractures. In other words, you're standing and maybe you cough and a vertebra fractures, it cracks, and you can fall to the ground. Once you fall, you can break your hip. So one of the things that I absolutely love about Pilates for bone health is the fact that we address your balance and your posture. So without strong stabilizing muscles that help you stand tall and balance your body, that is the ability to stand on one leg, the ability to walk on uneven surfaces, Pilates addresses that in every single workout we do. And so without you really realizing it, that strengthening of your posture and strengthening of your balance ability is key. You know, my dad passed away a couple of years ago in very late 90s, but one of the things that he was always worried about was falling. And so Pilates helped him tremendously, not only building strong legs, a strong core, but all the little stabilizing muscles that hold your spine together, that keep you upright and balanced. So important. If you've been diagnosed with osteopenia, which is the precursor to osteoporosis, then you really need to pay attention to the types of exercises that you do. And obviously, I want to go a little bit in depth on that. So if a client of mine comes to me and says, I have osteopenia, I'm going to try to help them build back their bone through diet and weight-bearing exercise. If they're already diagnosed with osteoporosis, we have to be very careful about the exercises that we can't do. So there's a few things that are happening to our spine as we age. The vertebrae that crack are in the back of your body. So one of the things that we have to avoid when you've got osteoporosis is the forward rounding of your spine. So all the exercises that we would avoid would be those that cause you to create the C curve. So no more C curves. Flat backs. You want to keep your back flat. Not only do you want to keep flat, but you want to try to encourage extension, which we do in so many of the exercises on the reformer. For example, I teach the elephant with a flat back. The traditional way to teach it is with a very rounded back. But the flat back tests the vertebrae. You can still stretch the hamstrings, really important to protect the pelvic stability and your lower back, but you're doing it in a safe way. Knee stretches. We do the knee stretch series. First one is a rounded back. You avoid anything where you're curving forward. You don't want any load on your spine in a forward curved position. So we encourage extension, that is leaning back. So knee stretches with the flat back or the extension. Eve's lunge with extension. These are important. You know, we spend so much time sitting, and when we sit, we tend to lean forward. Our hip flexors get tight, and I think the first sign often of someone that's at risk of osteoporosis is, number one, they lose height, and two, they begin to get curvature of the thoracic spine. And in your scans, when you do your bone density scan, tend to just look at L1 lumbar spine, L1 through 4. So a lot of times you'll get a diagnosis of, I have osteoporosis in my lumbar spine, but they're not looking at your thoracic spine, which is typically where it begins. And the reason they can't look there is that the imaging is, the bone is hidden by the rib cage. So your whole thoracic spine connects your head to the body through the ribs. And so they tend to look at the lower spine when they're doing those scans. So you might want to pay attention to whether you've lost height. Have you had any fractures at all? Or are you beginning to hunch forward? All right, so let's now get back to why Pilates on the reformer is so amazing for a healthy spine. It addresses balance, it addresses stabilizing muscles, which hold you together, and it's safe. You're lying down. Most of the time when you do the warm-up footwork, you're lying down. So the reformer is supporting you in the neutral spinal position. There's no risk of falling. You can begin to build muscle. And one of the things you need to understand when they say do weight-bearing exercise, when you build muscle, you're building bone. Bone is built by stresses and tension on your bones. So walking gently doesn't really build it. a little bit of impact as you walk, jumping on the rebounder with some high intensity. These are things that will help to create enough stress to cause the osteoblasts to build the bone inside your bone. So I hope that explains a little bit why Pilates is so amazing. So again, if you start Pilates young and you incorporate this into your life, I think it's the safest way to improve posture, build strength, build muscle, and build stabilizing strength, pelvic stability, shoulder stability, and joint range of motion. Obviously, if you're beginning at a much older stage of life, where there's already a little risk of bone loss, you want to make sure that you're not forward flexing too much, etc. So I hope that answers some of the questions around why I believe reformer Pilates is amazing. Unlike the mat is not a system that I would recommend to build bone, but the reformer, because you have resistance, is ideal. So in a workout that I would recommend for someone with osteoporosis or osteopenia is warm-up footwork, the leg work in the very beginning. You're lying down and you build up resistance, which is why it's so fantastic that we have the various chords, because you can add half a chord. As you get stronger, you can go to a full chord, etc. So they say that doing the same thing over and over and over again at the same resistance is not ideal. You need to stress your muscles. If you can do 10 reps and at the end of 10 to 12 reps, you feel like, oh, that was hard, that's good, keep going, and then challenge yourself a little bit more. In reformer Pilates, we often reduce resistance because that really works on the stabilizing muscles, which are important too, because they're attached to all your bones. So mixing it up and doing a workout every day, the stretching is important. All the stretches that we do, really important, because they're pulling on the bone. That causes the stress, that causes the bone to build more bone. So you would start with the warm-up footwork. And I recommend it often on high resistance, because you really want to build strength in your legs and you want to put some pressure on those major bones. Then we go right into lying down arms. So we're lying on the reformer, our legs are in the chair, our spine is neutral because we don't want to be in any forward flex position. We're working on using those muscles and teaching your body how to stabilize the pelvis throughout the entire workout. Now you're working with resistance, building strength in your arms, working from the back of your body. I talk about it all the time, from behind your shoulder blades, strengthening that trapezius, really bring stresses to the major muscles of your back. Again, building bone in the thoracic spine, which is really where we need it. And then we do the 100. Now, the 100 is a breathing exercise, really important to take breath in, but also to expel, get rid of all the stale air. If you've got osteoporosis, it's often avoided because of the lifting of the head. There's enough abdominal building throughout the workout that if you have osteoporosis, you wouldn't do the 100. Then we go into the arms in straps. In a seated position or a kneeling position, you're really building strength. You're putting stress on the muscles. You're building, it's all positive towards bone building. I teach the elephant with a flat back, as I mentioned earlier, because I want to avoid C curves in anybody that has any risk of bone loss. So when we do it with a flat back, really hinging at the hips, which is important, especially as we age. We want to be able to bend at the hips to pick something up, or bend our knees and have strength in our legs. We don't want to create C curves in our spine if we have risk of fracture. So strengthening the muscles, building your posture, improving your balance, and preventing injury by falling are the things that Pilates does all the time. So after your hands and arms in the straps building the upper body, we often end the workout with a stretching cool down. And if you have a risk of bone loss, then avoid the twisting and the forward flexion. Otherwise, I think you're going to see that your DEXA scans will improve, and obviously making sure that you get enough calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin K, and vitamin C. And again, talk to your doctor about all the supplementations. So I think I've explained a lot there. I know I wanted to do a Q&A, so and answer any question. I keep meaning to do these more often. Thank you, Bastian, always helping me set them up. Okay, Julie, hi. Thanks, Julie. It's my pleasure. Sharing the information I know in my own life, aging, having babies, exercising, is just a joy. Tried and true information. You know, I've done the research for you, certainly in my own life experience, and the book will share more of that. All right, thank you for your patience earlier. So Shirley, you have osteoporosis at 62. It's very common that women begin to lose bone, as I said, after menopause, because there's a lack of estrogen that supports the bone building. And so doing, you know, all the things we talked about, starting young in your life, you know, making sure your diet is really good even when you're young. So many people have gluten intolerance now and celiac disease, and that really affects the absorption of your nutrients. So I suspect that as that generation ages, there's going to be a lot more osteoporosis. Okay, Sylvia, you started Pilates 20 years ago. Okay, I understand. I mean, I think the 3 areas of our body where we see bone loss is in the hips, in the thoracic spine, and in the wrist. And a lot of my clients have very weak wrists. So in those circumstances, there's little gloves that you can wear that create a support that allows the wrist to be in a better ergonomic position. You always make sure when your hands are on the bar that your thumbs and fingers are on the same side of the bar, so the wrist is in alignment to the elbow to the shoulder. There's very few exercises where there's weight on the wrist, obviously in the long stretch when you do a push-up, but you know, if you're weak in the upper body, you're not going to be able to do that exercise anyway. And I would then recommend that you work really hard on the seated arms in straps exercises, working from behind your shoulder blades to really add range of motion to your shoulders and your joints and strengthen those muscles. Some people suffer from carpal tunnel. That's a misalignment of when you're using your wrist and your hands, it's out of alignment with the elbow and the shoulder. Starting to pay attention to that is really, really important. And we talk about it in all of the workouts. Marsha's asking for a video workout that's safe, and I will do that. This week, I will videotape a workout for people that are at risk. And I believe we actually already have one in the Lighter Living library, but I'll do a new one recently because I think that would be really helpful for everybody. Bastian, you'll help me remember to do that. Okay, let me see here. That was Sylvia and Marsha. Thanks for asking those questions. Now, there's a lot of other people that sent questions throughout the week, and I want to address those for you. Okay, so, oh, this was really great. This was from P101. Thank you for sharing. So you talked about taking calcium and strontium together. Strontium is quite a controversial mineral. And so obviously talk to your doctor about that. I think the important thing for you to know is that taking the right kind of calcium is important. Taking it with magnesium and vitamin D and vitamin K in an environment of vitamin C will allow the calcium to be broken down and absorbed into the bones, not just in your blood. You know, having serum calcium floating around doesn't do anything if it's not going to the cells that need it. And if you're not getting enough, your thyroid registers that, tells your bone to break down bone so that all the minerals in the bone can go back into where you need it. So It's a fine line between eating it and absorbing it. And I think just talking to your doctor about that and really paying attention to getting the right supplements, eating a lot of leafy green vegetables. One of the things I do, because I grow a lot of greens here, is I'll pick fresh greens, lots of them. Sometimes it's, this much. Put them in a large saucepan with a little olive oil and garlic, a little bit of onion. I like to add a little butter. And cook it all down to a mush, and then you blend it. And 1 tablespoon of that green mush is like eating a huge bowl of salad. And it's much easier to digest. And if you do it right, I think it's the most intense way to get your greens. It's certainly what I do regularly. And like every week, I make a huge container of it. Okay, Francesca, you're going on holidays. You need to lose some weight. We're talking about prolapsing, lower abs. All right, this is wonderful. This is where the exercises like elephant, knee stretches, and jumping, when you have less resistance, you have to engage your pelvic floor to bring the platform home. So less resistance on the reformer acts like your abdominal muscles. So if you have a lot of resistance, your abs don't have to do as much work. Then your major muscles are getting strong and building bone. If you go light, then your abs have to do more work. And as those abs engage, I always encourage my people to eagle, squeeze, use your pelvic floor to pull the platform home. And I think it works really, really well. I've seen people with prolapses reverse them because you're becoming aware and you're using inner thighs. In the standing side splits, for example, when we do the outer thigh, we're using our outer glute. But when we do the inner thigh on light resistance, think of squeezing the pelvic floor, lengthening the spine, and using your inner thighs to do that. I think I addressed everything. Flattening the tummy, low resistance jumping. We'll do it faster than anything. In the beginning, when your abdominals are weak, you kind of want to be careful you're not straining your lower back. But very quickly, you will begin to see that tummy flatten in the most amazing way. And then any kind of plank, which is hard if you've got weakness in your upper body. But if you're still young enough and you can do a plank both in a forward position and on the side, not only are you building bone, but you're working those core abdominal muscles in a way that nothing can. So I hope I answered that. Eilenia, what a beautiful name. You'd like classes in Italian. Talk to Bastian. He's going to translate them for you. Actually, he is such an amazing teacher now that he could actually record some and add them to our library. And I think that's what we should do. We should begin with some basic, then some intermediate, and a few advanced workouts in Italian with him teaching. He's an extraordinary teacher. So remind me and we will do that. Okay, Lana, you're asking about the use of your reformer every day. So I get my reformer every single day. I jump for 40 minutes and I do a full body workout that's about 45 minutes. I change it up all the time. So when I'm jumping, I sometimes do the workout 10 minutes at a time with different resistance to change the workout from core to legs, cardio. I'm building endurance that way and resilience, but I'm also building bone because I'm adding resistance. So I think that jumping a little bit, if you can do 10 minutes every day, you're going to see weight loss. In our studies, we saw 2 pounds a week, and people didn't really change anything else about their diets, or they just jumped for 20 minutes 3 times a week, and the weight will come off. You're burning 1.5 times the calories of running, but you're not hurting the joints, but you are doing weight-bearing exercise. And that's true of everything on the reformer. It's weight-bearing because of resistance. And your body weight is on the reformer as well. So it's a misnomer to think that there's no weight bearing on a reformer. So stretching is really, really important. Joe Pilates always said, you're only as young as your spine is flexible. And in our stretching classes with healthy spines, we do forward flexion, we do a lot of extension, we do a lot of twisting and side bending. Side bending is really important, especially if you've got any kind of for scoliosis or you do a lot of one-sided things. So the mermaid exercise in an osteoporotic person, I would do the mermaid just seated and side bending, none of the twisting. But again, twisting is really important if you've got a healthy spine, because you want to be able to rotate, you want to be able to side bend, you need extension, so your lumbar spine has a curve to it that protects the front of the spine and the back of the spine. You want to build core strength, which you do in every single exercise. Now, honestly, I can't even believe how profound doing the reformer is. At 70, I'm just amazed this machine was developed so long ago and that the benefits of it haven't been more touted, because if you want a strong, healthy, aligned, balanced, postured body in your aging years, the reformer is absolutely the answer. So you were saying that you do 40 minutes. I think that's fantastic. It's also very meditative, don't you think? And stress is a really important part of bone building. They say that stress can be one of the reasons people don't build bone. The things are too much alcohol, no exercise, stress, and then diet, lack of calcium. Obviously, you don't want to have too much calcium because then you get bone spurs and other things. But it's not the calcium in your blood, it's are you absorbing it? And so getting good calcium supplementation is important. Okay. So 10 reps versus 15 reps. I like to do 12. I don't know why. I think 10, you want to kind of feel a slight fatigue at the end of 10 to 12 though. If you're trying to build bone, like a bicep curl, I do 20 of those. You've seen that in every one of my workouts. And the reason I do 20 bicep curls and 20 tricep exercises is because I want arms that still have tone as I age. So I just do 20 reps, but at 10, it's hard. So I know I'm building that bone in my arms and my shoulders. Joan is asking about vitamin D. I mentioned it earlier. Vitamin D is essential. I've had more people come through my studio with symptoms of things that nobody can explain. Their hair is thinning, they're really fatigued, they just don't feel good, they're not hungry, they're not sleeping well. And the doctors do all the traditional tests and say, you're fine. The thyroid's fine, your heart is fine. What's lacking is vitamin D. And it's becoming chronic because we use sunscreen. Everybody's afraid of the sun. So the protocol is early in the morning, 9 o'clock, 15 minutes of unexposed, of exposed sun. What is it? No sunscreen exposure to the sun. So your skin to the sun early in the morning. 15 minutes a day really helps to build your vitamin D, but make sure you're getting it checked because there's genetics involved too. Some people need to make more vitamin D, don't make enough, don't absorb it. You get it in egg yolks. So those people that don't eat eggs, maybe, lack it. The other bone building food that's apart from green leafy vegetables is sardines in a can. The bones of the sardines is where all the minerals are. So, maybe looking at your diet a little bit, I think that's important. Gail is asking if bone density can be improved. And I think I've addressed that. We want to make sure we're building bone when we're young. And then as we age, we want to prevent it by moving, exercising, eating well. And then as we lose our hormones and we run the risk of breaking down more bone than we're making, then we want to make sure we're taking supplementation, getting strong and balanced so we don't fall, and getting some muscle building. strength, because as you build muscle, you're building bone. That's what they mean by weight bearing. It's a stressor on the bone that the muscles pull, because your muscles are attached to your bones. Okay, MBA mommy. Yes, I think I've answered that probably too many times now. I think the reformer is the most amazing way to not only build bone, but to keep you strong and healthy in every facet of your life. So we talked about, Robin, we talked about being diagnosed with L1 to 4 in the lower back. Okay, so I explained why that's your diagnosis. When they do the DEX scan, they look at your lumbar spine because there's nothing interfering there. Your thoracic spine is typically where osteoporosis begins and the fractures occur, but you can't see it on the scan because of the ribs being in the way. So you, particularly being diagnosed with this, need to do more extension. So that means leaning backwards. Avoid all forward flexion load. So all rounded, curved forward positions you want to avoid. And then twisting, being careful to twist. Jackie, knee function. All right, so knees, oh my gosh, most people after 50 have knee problems. Number one, they gain weight. Number two, their hamstrings are tight. 3, remember the knee is the connection from the lower part of your leg to the upper part of your leg. So it's a joint that bears a huge brunt of stress. And there's so many muscles attached to it, both from the bottom and from the top. So for example, if the T-band on the outside of your leg is tight, it's going to pull on the knee one way. If the inner thigh, which we work every single day on our reformer, is weak or tight, it's going to pull on your knee. Then you've got the lower muscles that are pulling. The hamstrings are really important. If they're tight, the knee takes the stress. So what I love the most about the reformer is we begin every workout with the warm-up work, which is all about strengthening the knees. You're lying down so your back is safe. You're building resistance by adding cords and strength. You can also go light, but to build knee strength, if you add little pulses after every one of the full extensions, do a little pulse. It's going to work all the stabilizing muscles of the knee. The important thing to pay attention to is that the patella of the knee tracks over the foot, which is under the hip. So again, it's an alignment thing. If I was standing and I hung a plumb line from my hip bone, would it fall straight through my knee into the center of my foot? And from the side, the same thing. Does the knee fall in the center? If you've got hyperextended knees, it falls back. If you've got tight hamstrings, it falls forward. The reformer addresses all those things. So stretching and strengthening the lower body is key for knee health. I'm sure you've had a diagnosis. If you've perhaps got a tear in your meniscus, and that's very common, especially as we age, or chondromalacia, which is the lack of hyaluronic acid and padding in the knee itself. I get hyaluronic acid injections every year, which I have found to be really wonderful. It's a natural substance that they inject into the knee joint, and it gives lubrication and padding. And I think it's just kept my knees in really great shape. But, you can have injuries, you can, tear your meniscus. A lot of people with torn meniscuses, if they manage their lower body strength well, they have no pain. So, there's a healing process that happens. Be gentle, but do that warm-up footwork. And I think you'll see a really big difference in your knees. Ray is 81. Congratulations. You've got arthritis, osteoporosis, scoliosis. These are all, very common things that happen after 50. So you've had 31 years of losing bone density. I think I've answered the question. Just get on your reformer, do a little rebounding, be very gentle with everything to start, build up resistance to get strength, stretch. These are key things. So again, D, I've answered that. I think the reformer is the most amazing piece of apparatus for building bone and preventing loss of bone and correcting imbalances in the body. There's an amazing physiotherapist that I listen to. Her name is Sherri, with 2 R's and an I, Betz. I'll have Bastian add her links in the show notes. She discovered Pilates and yoga and uses them to build bone in her osteoporotic patients. And so I think if you listen to her, and you will rest assured and be satisfied to know that your reformer is probably the safest way. It supports you. It's got resistance. You're not on the mat where all your imbalances are just sort of struggling. A lot of the mat work is rounded back. You want to avoid that. Yoga's the same. I mean, in yoga, you're working balance really well because you hold postures for a long time, but there's not really any impact. So building bone in yoga is tricky, but she's really good at explaining that. All right, I think, oh, Linda's asking about adding weights. Yes, I think adding weights is great, especially if you're doing your jumping. We'll get you to do in one of our videos, let's do a jumping workout using weights, because you've done all kinds of research on that. You know, lately we've been trying to understand how many steps you get on the reform working out, and the question, of course, then is calorie burn and all of those things. In the study, we saw 1.5 times the calorie burn of running, which is really hard to imagine. But I think jumping with weights is a great way to do it. And if you do it mindfully, you're going to work from the back of your body and really get your thoracic spine stronger as well, which is really where osteoporosis begins. So let's do a couple of those workouts and we'll add them to the YouTube channel. All right, I think I have answered everybody. Let me see if there's anyone else. No, I think that's it. Let me know, Bastian, if we need to do anything else here. I spoke a lot. I'm so sorry there was that glitch in the beginning. I feel like I talked too much. If there's anything you need demonstration-wise, let me just do a couple of demos to talk about the difference between the C curve and the flat back. So let's start with the knee stretches, which I think is a great exercise. So my knees are lined up under my hips always. My hands are at shoulder width. Anytime I put my hands on the bar, my thumbs and fingers must be on the same side of the bar. Look what happens when I do this. The wrist is completely out of alignment and you end up with carpal tunnel. So here, if you need extra support in your wrists, there are these little gloves, I'll show you before I leave, that you can add support here so that the angle of the pressure on the wrist is reduced. All right, so here, if I do a typical knee stretch, I would start with a curved back. This is something you avoid if you have any kind of bone density issue. So then you go to a flat back, but it's actually an extended back. So here, my bottom is sticking up, my head is up, and I've got nice extension in my lumbar spine. I'm also obviously building my knees, building my pelvic floor, especially if I go light. But the most important thing here is that I'm protecting the thoracic spine and adding extension. So you're going to avoid the C curve and you're going to absolutely add the either flat back or extended. In the down stretch, often you'll see it like a plank, like a half plank with a straight back. I like to encourage slight extension, but you have to stay out of your, you can't compress into it. You have to lengthen your spine, and creating that extension really, really helps protect you from fractures if you've got bone density issues. Elephant, I do the elephant. Traditionally, again, you would create a C curve where you're lifting through the middle of the ribs And in healthy classes, I do that all the time. But I teach it typically with a flat back. It's important. You get more stretch in your hamstrings that way, plus your spine is protected. And again, there's not a lot of weight in my hands. The weight is in my feet. All right, mermaid. Let's talk stretches quickly. If you've got a problem with a risk factor at all with bone loss, you need to definitely side bend, but no twisting. And again, it's lengthening. So it's inhale, exhale, reach. So the feeling is someone's gently tugging on my hand while my hip gets pushed this way. So it's kind of opposite forces. But side bending is key. You want all those intercostal muscles to stretch, your ribs open. And obviously you would do the other side as well. No twisting, obviously. The standing side splits. What I love about this is, we do heavy, we work the outside muscles, so you're working the outer leg, and then we go very light. And what you're doing then is strengthening through here, pelvic floor, lifting, lengthening the spine. Our inner thigh muscles are so important for stability. And most people don't even realize they have adductors. Men certainly don't use them. But pelvic floor and inner thigh strength not only will still stabilize your pelvis and make you much stronger in your lower body, but it prevents prolapse and it helps with balance, which is one of the key risk factors in osteoporosis, is falling. Not just falling from a spontaneous fracture, but actually falling because you've lost balance. You need strength in your legs, and you need that proprioceptive strength that you get from doing those side splits. All right, I think I've talked enough. Is there anything else that, let me see if there's a message from him on anything else. I think we're good. I love doing these. Let me know what you want me to talk about. The book is actively being written. It's a labor of love, and I am excited to share it. And reach out to me with any questions you have. Make sure you eat well, sleep well, feel well, laugh a lot, be with your friends, enjoy your life, and live a little lighter, because what's the point if you're not doing that? Thank you for everything, and I'll see you soon.